So first I'm going to show you how this page works, and then we're going to go through the code. So this is how it looks when you first load it. So you've got the vertical code and you've got three balls. So for the text, if you point, it is going to go from vertical to horizontal, but you need to just kind of point and take your hand off the mouse. If you try to follow the text around, it's not going to switch to vertical. It gets really confused. You can see if I try to move the mouse and follow, it doesn't work as well. So if I just kind of point it and take my hand off, it works great. For the first shape, let me reload here. There is a 1 second delay, and then it goes from circle to square, turquoise circle, magenta square, and it does it 10 times. The animation itself only lasts a half a second, so it's over fairly soon. The moving, bouncing ball is animating much more slowly. It's 10 seconds, and we have 20 iterations, so it's going to do the full cycle 20 times. We do have it set, both of them are set to alternate. So it goes one direction and then it goes back. So in the case of this turquoise to magenta, it goes turquoise to magenta, then magenta back to turquoise, then turquoise to magenta, magenta back to turquoise. For this ball, once it hits the end of the animation, it reverses and goes back the other direction. Just creates a little smoother animation. For the last one, you're not going to see anything unless you actually point at the ball, and then it gets a lot bigger. Okay, so we have it scaling here. So that's pretty much the animation on the three balls. And now we're going to take a look at the code. So we do have this in a flex box. And you can see for H2, which is the text, we initially display that rotated. We're using transform rotate Z for that. If we do rotate H, you can actually get a horizontal mirror image, and rotate Y, you can get a vertical mirror. But to get the effect that we wanted, which was just to kind of rotate at 90 degrees, we use Z. And then that only occurs, the rotation occurs on the hover. So we have H2 colon hover, and basically rotate Z goes back to 0. 0 is horizontal. And then we get rid of that top margin because we don't really need it. As far as the transition, we are telling it up here in H2 that when it does the transformation, it should take 2 seconds. And we want it to ease in, which means it starts out slow, it ends fast. The divs are the child containers in our flex box. And the divs, each of the balls is created using the ball class. Okay, so you can see that we have the ball class here. We have a radius, a border radius of 50%, and that creates the circle. Width and height are both the same. And we have a turquoise to black radial gradient, gives it a little 3D appearance. Now for the first ball, the morph, we have it go from this turquoise to black color to magenta and black. And we also have it kind of morphing down to a square. So what we needed to do in the keyframes is specify all that. So we have at keyframes, the name of the animation is morph, and the from has to have the current settings. So we've got background, radial gradient, turquoise and black, border radius 50%. Those are the two things that we're changing. Okay, so those are, anything that you're changing goes in the from line. And you'll notice that after the keyword from, we have a right or a left curly brace, Then we have our CSS, the property and the value. And if there's multiple, we have the semicolons between them. And then on the far right, we have the right curly brace. So this is all the starting condition. So what you see here on from, you're also going to find up here in our ball class. And then 2 is where you are heading with your animation. So what your end result is going to be. So we are changing the gradient color to magenta and black. We're changing the border radius to 0, which means it's going to be a square. And then we're making it a little bit smaller. So it was 100 for the height and the width, and we're changing it to 80. Okay, so that is the animation. And what is going to play the animation is the morph ID. Now we didn't want to add the animation command to the ball class because that class is being used in multiple places. And we don't want every single ball on the page to morph. We only want one of them to morph. That is why we're using an ID. If you put something in a class, you typically apply it to more than one element. And if you put something in an ID, it's typically applied to one thing. Okay, so we are only going to apply morph to one of the balls. So here we've got morph. The animation name is morph, and it's going to play for a half a second. So we've got 0.5. There will be a 1 second delay, which means the page will display for a second and then it'll start. We are going to have it run 10 times and we're going to have it alternate. So that means it goes from turquoise to magenta, magenta back to turquoise, turquoise to magenta, magenta back to turquoise. Goes through this 10 times. But it's going to be fairly quick because the animation only lasts a half a second each time. Now for the bounce, let me reload this. That starts right away. There's no delay on it. You can see it's kind of wiggling because of our morph here. But you can kind of see that it's not straight up and down because we are manipulating the X and the Y. So when you see it kind of go to the left, that would indicate negative on your X. And if it goes towards the right, it's positive. And any movement up and down, of course, is your Y. So let's take a look at that bounce code. So we've got our keyframes for bounce, transform, translate. So we didn't do translate Y or translate X because we want to do both X and Y. And that is the values that we're giving it. And so how did I come up with these values? Well, I didn't find the perfect balance of values to begin with. It was kind of trial and error. I put some values in. If I didn't like it, I changed it. I slowed this animation down enough so that I could actually follow what each one of these were doing. So right now, the animation plays at 10 seconds, but you can increase that number. And then it's pretty easy to follow what each one of these is doing to the ball. Okay, so if you ever get confused, just slow that animation down. The animation is running 20 iterations and it alternates. So basically it goes through this list and then it goes kind of backwards back to the top, and then it goes down and then it goes backwards. Okay, and so this is our animation called bounce. Our bounce ID is what is associated with the animation. That is what's going to play it. And we have got that ID down here on our second ball. So that is why that ball is kind of moving around. Now for the third ball, we just wanted it to get bigger. So for the third ball, we have an ID of ball transform. And you'll notice that the third one is the only one that doesn't use the ball class. And so for the third one, ball transform, we have the turquoise gradient, we have the border radius, the height, and the width. Okay, we've got all of that defined in ball transform. because we wanted to set up a hover for that. And we wanted the hover to make the change. And we couldn't really put a hover on our ball class because that would have affected all of the balls. And we did not want all of the balls impacted. We only wanted the third one. So we set up a little ID for the third one. And then we've got the ball transform hover, which lets us scale it. So we're scaling both X and Y. That's why we didn't use scale X or scale Y. We just used scale. And we're also changing the color of the gradient. That's all part of the transformation when we do the hover. We're making it about 3 times bigger. So as you see, it is quite a bit larger when we do the hover. So that is pretty much the code for the balls. So you're going to want to save your changes and test it. And if it does not work the way mine did, you're going to have to kind of look through to see if you've made any typos. And as long as you don't have typos, it should work pretty much like this one. And I can open it into another browser, and it's going to work the same way.